เมื่อมองดูนกพกพินบินลับไปเมื่อมองสายชนถึงไหลรินยามเหงาเราถอน
All right, before I get into kind of the main topic I want to talk about, did everybody get their Mimom homeopathic that I made for everyone yesterday?
Thank you very much.
And you're clear about the directions?
Shake it, right? You shake it in 2 drops, at least once a day.
2 drops is the dose once a day, and if you need more, you can do it up to 3 times a day. Okay, but don't do it more than 3 times a day, and don't do more than 2 drops at a time. And
Go under the tongue?
no, no, it's not a sublingual. It's not one at a time. It's not a sublingual.
Just in the mouth?
Water.
Oh, yeah.
Put it in a glass of water, or put it in your bottle of water. But also, I see people with bottles of water in here. Take them outside. I don't know if Noi already mentioned to you I did not want bottles of water in the classroom, but I do not. Did Julie mention it? She should have.
As long as it's on a lid.
No, if it's going to be in here, it has to have a lid. But that's different from I don't want it in here. You understand? That's 2 different things. And let me, once everyone's back, let me explain briefly about the water, okay? It's not a water class, so I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. But we are not doing an endurance sport here. You are not losing water at the liter per hour rate due to high intensity exercise and or inclement weather and excessively hot temperatures. So there is actually no reason in the world why you should just be constantly sipping on water. No reason in the world, okay? The only people in performance and athletes who sip on water continuously is because they are losing it continuously. Okay, so in a normal day at this kind of sedentary activity, you will lose approximately 4 to 8 cups of water every 12 hours. Okay, 12 hours, right? So if you're constantly sipping on water, you're actually drinking much more than you're losing, which means that you're simply going to have to urinate frequently. That's the only thing that happens, is you have to urinate more frequently, okay? It's better to drink a full glass of water, 8 ounces, full glass of water, and then, an hour or 2 later, drink another one. But you're not in an endurance sport. You're not doing anything that requires that you be continuously hydrated. And so from a health point of view, it serves no function. And all it does is mean you have to go to the bathroom more, which is disruptive. So it not only doesn't serve a health function, it's actually disruptive. Okay? And also the way your bladder is made to work, okay, organically, biologically, it's meant to get full and then tell you you have to urinate, and then you go urinate, and then it's empty and it resets. If you keep your bladder full all the time, you weaken the reset mechanism where your bladder can communicate to you properly when it's too full or too empty. You understand? You probably never heard this before. I am so happy to tell you things that are true that you've never heard before. You can add that to the list. Okay, you can add it to your list, all right? So, as far as homeopathics go, okay, there's a couple of things. There are some general rules, and then there are some flexible things, depending on what we're talking about. Okay? So, I make a generic remedy. I mean, there's nothing generic about it. I only make it. Nobody else makes it in the whole world. Okay? Which is called Mimom. And it has to do with, it's a silver methylene blue iodine infusion. Okay, it's a silver methylene blue iodine infusion. Okay, is the base. The silver I make myself. And I use a silver machine from Silver Edge. That's the company that makes the machine I use. And then I put the container of silver, the glass container of silver that I'm making, on a magnetic stirrer, a laboratory grade magnetic stirrer. And while the silver is being made, I rotate it in a toroidal fashion. I make a little whirlpool in the silver at about 3,500 RPM the entire time that it's making the silver, which makes what we call nascent silver, or silver with extremely small particles, nanoparticles. Okay? So that means that the silver has a greater ease of penetrating cells. That's the whole point. Okay? Methylene blue, which was the first, actually methylene blue was the first chemical drug ever invented. Okay, so that's how long it's been around, and that's how long it's been in common use. Until the invention of the major prescription drug antibiotics, after Henry Ford and Louis Pasteur and a few others did their PAC group, where they did their worldwide promotion on antibiotics, cure all disease and every disease. Until they did that, methylene blue was in fact the most powerful antibiotic used in the world. Okay, used in the world. Now there are other antibiotics, substances, natural substances, so on, even silver. It's been around since Roman times. Sulfur, yellow sulfur, okay, has been used for centuries as an antibiotic. It's quite powerful. Now, of course, we have artificial or synthetic sulfur antibiotics, sulfur drugs they're called, okay? But the methylene blue is an aniline dye, and it was invented originally to allow biologists to stain organic medium or mechanic materials or cells so they could put them on a microscope and see them more clearly. Okay, that's why it was invented. They were looking for something that would penetrate the cell wall, would change the color, so you could differentiate the treated cells from the non-treated cells, and then you could very clearly see them on a backlit microscope. Backlit being, in the early days when this was invented, microscopes didn't have lights, they had a mirror. And so you would catch the sunlight and reflect it into the microscope to be able to see what you have to see. Of course, now all microscopes have their own light source. Okay? Well, of course they noticed that the methylene blue has the capacity to penetrate the cell, easily penetrate the cell and stain it. Okay? And some bright person said, well, wait a minute, what happens if we apply this to living cells? And so they studied that, and what they found out was that the methylene blue penetrated the cell and then killed pathologic bacteria and virus and fungus and things like that. It penetrated the cell and it killed it. Ergo, antibiotic. Antibiotic means kills bacteria. That's what it means. Okay? How viruses come into this thing starts with Raymond Royal Rife's research. Because Rife was a student of Andrew Beauchamp, who was a French biologist, chemist extraordinaire. Louis Pasteur's college professor, And actually, Louis Pasteur worked for Andrew Beauchamp for a period of time. That was his first job as a graduate scientist. Henry Ford recruited Louis Pasteur from Beauchamp's clinic in Paris to work for the Ford Foundation and to develop synthetic antibiotics and so on and so forth. But Andrew Beauchamp differed from Louis Pasteur in that he believed that viruses and bacteria were the same thing, the same entity, the same organism, the same creature, and the only thing that was different between a virus and a bacteria is stage of life or life cycle. In other words, a virus is a baby bacteria before it differentiates, like a stem cell is called generic, undifferentiated stem cell until it's delivered to part of the body where it's given a signal to become an epithelial cell or an osseous cell or a neuron. Okay? But before it's told to become a neuron, it's what's called a stem cell or an undifferentiated cell. It's anomalous. It's not anything. It's everything and not anything all at the same time. And then the body recruits the stem cells wherever there's damage, either from age or trauma or pathogens or whatever process. And then when the stem cells are delivered to the construction site where the damage is in the body, brain, bone, skin, wherever, eye, hair, wherever, the dying cells are releasing a radio signal. It's in a radio frequency. It's why frequency medicine is increasingly so important. The more you understand about how the body works, that everything operates according to radio and light and electromagnetic frequencies. So when the stem cells get to the site of the damage, the dying cells alarm. They're releasing an alarm. Help, I'm dying. Help, I'm dying. But it's at a very specific frequency. It's help, I'm a skin cell dying. Help, I'm a skin cell dying. And when the stem cell gets within range of the frequency of the dying tissues and receives that signal, it goes just like in the movies and becomes what is the alarm signal that it heard. So if the alarm signal was coming from osseous cells, which are bone cells, like you break a bone, and how does a bone become not broken, right? You break a bone, you have a fracture, and then at some point the bone is no longer broken. How does a broken bone become a not broken bone? Well, the broken bone instantly changes polarity, instantly begins to send off an electromagnetic signal, a distress signal, not pain. Okay? The bone doesn't hurt when the bone breaks. The bone does not send a pain signal. I know. I've broken 41 bones, and yes, I will tell you, in my opinion, broken bones hurt like crazy. Okay? But scientifically, it's not the bone that's sending the pain signal. It's the nerves around the bone that are being affected by the stress, damage, and inflammation that are sending the pain signal. Okay? But the bone is sending a signal. The second the bone fractures, the ends of the broken bones change polarity. They change polarity. So in a healthy bone, the outside surface of the bone has a positive charge, and the inside has a negative charge. And the second the bone breaks, those charges swap on the ends. They swap. The polarity changes. And that creates an electric current. And it creates a magnetic field. It creates a radio signal. And that change in electricity, that change in magnetism, and that change in radio frequency, because all bones produce radio frequencies. How about that? That change in the signal recruits, says, send the stem cells. And so a bunch of stem cells are manufactured by the bone marrow and are sent to the site of the fracture where they're just kind of hanging around. Okay, they're just hanging around. But as soon as they get into the near environment, the dense environment of that signal, the stem cells begin to differentiate into osteoblasts, into bone cells. And then according to the strength of the signal, like it's called it's a law of attraction, really. The stronger the signal is where they want to be. And the strongest area where the signal is being broadcast happens to be the actual edges of the broken bone. And so then they glom to that site where the bone is broken, and they accumulate until there's far more of them than needs to be there. And they produce what's called a blastema. And the blastema is like a blood clot, but with osteoblasts, with calcium cells and bone cells. And they build this big puffy matrix that fills in the gap where the broken bone is. And they begin to grab the edges and pull them together. And as soon as they fill in the gap and pull it together, the signal turns off. And the polarity changes, boop, back to where it was. The polarity switches again. And as soon as the polarity switches, the bone is no longer broken, quote unquote, and how we know that is because it's no longer attracting fibroblastic tissue of osteous stem cells. Well, that process happens to every tissue and every part of the body. Every single one. It is the process of what we call cellular regeneration. That's what cellular regeneration is for dying or dead cells or damaged cells. That's what that is. Okay? Everything else is like sort of trying to keep the cell alive a little bit longer until it gives up the ghost. But once it gives up the ghost, it has to be replaced. And if it's replaced, you stay healthy and young, and that's called longevity. And if they are not successfully replaced by new stem cells, then that's called aging and dying, until you are half the person you used to be. And actually, that's not a metaphor, because the cells are no longer being replaced with the new stem cells at the rate that they were before. You literally are not the person that you used to be when you were still in regenerative function. So a lot of good supplements are based on, whether they tell you that or not, are based on attracting and supporting the production of stem cells, and then if you want to say frequency metabolism, where the body is constantly communicating to the stem cell factories to bring the cells to where they need them most, to create the regeneration. And you can heal almost any wound based on this. All right. Methylene blue apparently stimulates the cells, one, to be more resistant to pathological influence, invasive bacteria, fungus, and virus. Okay, and it's okay if you just say it's antibacterial, because Beauchamp's understanding, which was passed to a student, Raymond Royal Rife, which is now passed to us, okay, was that virus and bacteria are the same thing. That's why there is no such thing as a cure for a viral illness, and never will be. So all cure for all viral illness that you hear of is actually marketing, and it's bogus, and it's not scientific. No viral illness has ever been cured as of today in the world. There's no such thing. And nor is there likely to be. And the reason why is because to sell viral cures is marketing. It's not science. It's just that you can make a lot of money selling viral cures. That's why there are so-called viral cures. But virus and bacteria are the same thing. The only thing that's different is their life cycle, and what determines whether a virus becomes a bacteria or a bacteria becomes a virus is environmental stress. Environmental. Okay? There's also in nature no such thing as chemical or naturally harmful bacteria to humans or naturally harmful virus to humans. There's actually no such thing, okay? Bacteria are not bad and viruses are not bad. The reason why bacteria and viruses exist in the natural world, well, first of all, it's a chicken or egg controversy, is because, of course, the millions of bacteria and viruses in the world existed long before humans. Long. In fact, they populated the world before algae. So bacteria and viruses, the oceans were viral and bacterial soups because algae is a complex organism. And even complex organisms, simple ones like algae, like spirulina or whatnot, they are composed of bacterial colonies and virus. They're still an organized, a complex entity. That's why we say it's a complex organism. Even algae is a complex organism. And algae existed before we were mud bugs. Before we were bugs that tried to crawl out of the primordial ooh or goo of the first ocean in the most ancient past imaginable. So from day one, whatever path of evolution and creation that we have participated in to get here, so you can sit here and look at me like I'm not really sure where he's going with this, bacteria and virus has been part of your construction, part of your makeup, absolutely. That's why I say weird things like, if we were to subtract all the bacteria and virus from your body right now, if we could have a ray gun that could just do that and extract the bacteria and the virus, there'd be about 30 pounds of you in a gooey ball on the floor. Because mostly that's what you're made of. Mostly. That's what you're made of. Okay? And so you can't survive without bacteria and virus. We are synergistic, symbiotic organisms, complex organisms. In the most ancient path of evolution, the stomach that we enjoy inside of us was not inside of us, it was outside of us. And we made a friendship with the stomach organism and said, hey, if you'll help digest more complex food for me, carbohydrates, proteins, and enzymes, okay, I will take you places you could never imagine. And so the stomach organisms, the little organelles and what complex organisms that were really good at digesting things, said, hey, yeah, let's hang. And so they got together. And that's why our stomach has its own milieu and has its own bacterial populations, if you will, that are unique to the stomach environment and are found nowhere else. But then we had a problem. The stomach was like all cool with that, and so we hooked up with the stomach, not realizing that the stomach created byproducts called waste. And we're like, oh no. Now we just leak waste everywhere. We're constantly leaking waste everywhere. So we looked around, we found another little organism that was really good at collecting and transforming waste into less toxic substances. And so we went over to our colon creatures, our little colon complex organisms, and said, hey, come hang out with us. We're doing a thing with the stomach. And if you hang out with us, the stomach is going to feed you. And the little colon creature said, hey, yeah, that sounds good. And so it joined the community. And originally, all these things were all separate on the outside, and they just lived according to proximity. And then eventually, they were so used to being with each other, they created networks of connection so that they wouldn't be accidentally separated, because that would be death to this new complex organism. Okay? And eventually, they took all that was on the outside, and to protect the system, the community, if you will, they inverted it and put it all on the inside. Now we have a jellyfish, where the stomachs and all those organisms and so on, which are separate organisms, now are living inside of an umbrella. And a nervous system begins to develop to tell everybody what to do and when to do it. And also to organize the whole community in case we have to move because of threat, external threat. And so nervous system begins to be developed. And then eventually you get to you, sitting right here in the classroom wondering, why am I talking about this? Okay? The glory of evolution, the glory of intelligent design, however you want to say it, to get to you, from jellyfish to mudbug to you, to complaining you, to complaining you, to confuse you. All this effort to get to, you're the pinnacle. You are the peak. You are the very top of that chain. Okay? That means every one of us is unique and special, and has to be, because a lot's been invested to get you here. Lots been invested. And for what? So, what is the natural role of the bacteria and the virus and so on? Even the coronavirus, because there's at least 50 different coronaviruses that we know of, okay? The role is to turn you back into compost so you can become food for everything else. The role of the bacteria and the virus is to turn you back into essential elements which can be fed to other bacteria and virus, which are food for every other living thing on the planet. That's what they're for. The only problem is when the bacterial and virus, the bacteria and virus colonate and overpopulate prematurely. See, after you die, how many people garden? I garden. I love to garden. That's why we have gardens. And you can see some little organized gardens here, and then you can't see others, because I've done gardening here even off in every corner of the woods. There are gardens that I have built. Like I'm building a succulent garden in the far back, sort of center right. There's a sandy area back there with the water oaks, and you'll notice that there are several different kinds of cactus and indigenous cactus all in one spot. Every one of those I planted. Every one of those that's back there, I dug up from somewhere else, brought here, and put it there. Okay? So that is actually a garden. I just didn't put up a sign that said succulent garden. Native plant succulent garden. Okay? Like the needle plants that are back there, that's what the Seminoles used to make their clothing and to make their pots and their baskets, because you can take the end of one of the leaves on that cactus and you can just pop it off, and then you pull it and it gives you a string the length of the leaf. And then you can literally take that thorn with that piece of lignin and you can use it like needle and thread. And it will last. Okay? And that's how they made the pine baskets and things that Seminoles are very famous for. That's what they sewed them together with. Okay? Before thread. Right? Well, I have a bunch of those that I'm cultivating. All right? But see, the problem is not that you have virus or bacteria. The problem is when the bacteria or the virus wants to make you into compost prematurely. We need compost for the garden. I'm always making compost. I have several compost piles. All of this is compost piles I have made. These big piles right here, it's not accidental. Okay? I even have brought bulldozers in here to shape those piles and pile them up, and every once in a while I get a backhoe in here and I invert them. I take what's on the bottom and put them on the top, and I take what's on the top and I bury it under, and I've got 4 piles here I've been working on for 5 years that we use. And where all the little open area out here where the grass is, when we first moved here there was not a blade of grass because there was no dirt. It was sand, like a sandbar, like at the beach. And so I've been taking the compost from over here by the barrel full and by the wheelbarrow full and so on, and I have been moving it over here, and I've actually put almost 8 inches of dirt that I have made out here around the fire pit in order to be able to have a little grass out here. And I'm still working on it. So that is my garden also, that grass in front of the dorms and around the fire pit. That wasn't there. There was just sand, big sand, no grass. Some weeds, no grass, right? But I wanted a little grassy area. So the compost starts with, the organic things die, the food, the trees, the branches, the whatever, okay? And then the bacteria, over a period of time, decomposes it, breaks it up into its fulvic minerals, humic acid, it's into its minerals, proteins, carbs, and enzymes, and feeds it to fungus and other bacteria, and then it turns it into a living thing we call compost. And then that compost is food for everything. Everything that there is lives off of some equivalent of compost. Okay? When you die, you will become compost. Now, we have strange customs in the West where we think, we take the body and we put it in a casket, and then we put the casket in a lead box, and then we bury that like you're going to live forever. Okay? And somehow we're denying the land our resource that the land gave us when we were born. We try to keep it away from the land.
Buried in a concrete vault.
Say it again?
And that lead box is buried in a
Sometimes.
concrete vault.
Yeah, sometimes mausoleum, right? But in other cultures, you don't do that. You bury in a wood box, a pine box, and your ancestors compost and become food for the worms, and you can grow garden in the cemetery. You can grow food in the cemetery, okay? In Asian cultures, they do crematory. And so they burn the bodies, but then the ashes are distributed back in the land, okay?
There's an argument that even that, like here in the United States, it's bad for the environment to do cremation.
Yeah, it's not.
So it must be different in China.
No, it's not. It's just not bad. Ash is good for the soil. Ash is good for the soil. And human ash is no different from ash of any other animal or any other creature. None at all. No different at all. Okay? Biologically, chemically, physically, no different. The only difference is that we ascribe emotionally. Those are the only differences.
Too many days in the darkness without a glimpse of the light. Running tired and broken and scared, but I swear I'll never give up the fight. I see you broken and beat,